Thanks for tuning in to Different is Good, where we come together to encourage parents, teachers, administrators, and especially those with neuro differences to come to understand that being neurodifferent is indeed good. So we kind of feel like once we accept, not kind of, we definitely feel as though once we accept and understand these gifts and strengths, that everyone's empowered. So Trish Cook is here, and so is Lauren. Oh gosh, Deloney. I know you so well now, and I'm like, this is my neuro difference. First name, please, starts with an L.
Laurel.
Is that crazy?
Not crazy.
Laurel. All right, so now here's
It
how
is
I'm going to know
normal.
it forever. Okay, here's how I'm going to know it forever, Laurel. L in the beginning, L at the end, Laurel. That's
Yep.
crazy. I wanted to call
Not
you
crazy. It's
Lauren,
very
Laura,
common.
Laurel. Okay, so anyway, moving on. Different is good, right? And in the past, we'd be all like, oh my goodness, I messed up in the very beginning. And then you condemn yourself and feel terrible. So no, that is not something that benefits us. And we just recognize it and move on, give grace and move on. Because I know Laurel's not condemning me. I know she's not. But today we're going to take a stab at explaining the many facets of neurodifferences. So we have Trish Cook here, who is the founder of My Albert. Trish, tell us your background real quick.
Okay. Well, I was diagnosed in 1983 with CAPD and a severe learning disability. So a lot of things, being that was so long ago, a lot of things got unnoticed, undiagnosed, and that's just fine. But right now, I'd like to label myself have a neurodiversity in auditory and visual, along with being neurodivergent. That's really, and no, it's kind of complicated, but that's how I like it to
Yeah,
be.
so that's your
Addresses.
yeah, that's you in a nutshell.
Yeah.
And all of that difference is amazingly good, because all of the good that you're pouring out into the world and all of the people and the children and the teachers that you're helping understand that different is good. But one of the things that you feel so very passionate about is to get our listeners to understand what the why behind it. What is it to be neurodifferent? So again, we're going to take a stab at trying to help the listeners understand the difference, right? But before we head into that, I just want to say that my name is Linda Coyle. I am a special education teacher in Atlantic City, New Jersey. And I am in the position to be sharing My Albert, which is a program that helps the whole child. And last episode, we talked about the fact that we could celebrate a lot so far, that we laid the foundation of what it's like to do some assessments, checklists to find out what their strengths and weaknesses are, and gifts. We laid the foundation for team building. Right up to the winter break, we realized that we have another component that needs to be addressed, and that is their sleep, school to home connection, trying to help the parents understand that their sleep is extremely important. A lot of my kids are staying up too late, gaming. They also are not eating correctly. I reached out, like I said I was going to a lot of special ed groups, asking for wisdom and knowledge and help regarding how to implement that part and how to get help and how to get funding to pay for the revamping of a classroom that I think needs to happen. But in addition to sharing all of that journey, we also are here to help others share their story, their journey. So when we first started the podcast, we wanted listeners to know our story, right? And when we shared our story, it empowered us to and helped us understand our differences, which when you understand it and accept it, so much opens up. And so that's what we want to offer. So if there's any listeners out there where you feel after we explain the differences between, what neurodifference is and all of the components of it, if you find that, you know what, I think I might be neurodifferent, reach out to us and let us know if you want to find a way to share your story so you feel empowered and help yourself, number one, and then anybody else that you come across, right? So I hope that made sense. So anyway, so we have Laurel Deloney here, who also is neuro different. And do you want to share, Laurel, like where you are in a neurodifference? Are you on the spectrum?
Yes.
Yes. So you're on the spectrum as far as autism?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Very high
All right.
functioning.
High functioning.
Yes. And I think one thing that I've realized is that, and it's something that I've read that is very typical with females with autism, is that there's a lot of masking, what they call masking, and, trying to figure out how to fit in, and, seeing what everybody else considers normal, and then trying to be that person, and not being, masking what my symptoms are, so that I appear normal and not, follow the social cues and, what the social norms are, which is very tiring at times.
Yes. So that is very trying. So that brings us to, so this is what I love about this podcast. So really, it's just girlfriends coming together and having just a simple conversation, based on what's coming up. And so to me, I think that that's the beauty of this, for you to share raw, right? How it feels to be a person with autism, that you feel like you have to fit into a box. But what we're trying to let the listeners know is that being different is good, and that there's a reason that you are born this way, right? There's a reason why I have dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, all of this, it sounds so negative, but really we have come to realize that we are this way because we are here to help others. And so that's our purpose. That's our purpose in life. And so once we come to terms and embraced our quote unquote disability, it's really an ability to help others. And there's nothing better than that. Like they always say, oh, you're sad? Guess what? Go help somebody and watch what happens. So it's a gift. And we're very grateful for our neurodifferences.
Yeah.
So
any struggle, everybody's got their struggle, but any struggle, once you've overcome and accept it and you come to terms with it and you heal it, then yes, to turn around with compassion. That's the true need to want to make the difference to help somebody else. It only brings you also more healing on top of healing, so yeah, like you said, very glad we have this podcast.
Yeah, and so thank you, Trish, for taking the time when you consult with teachers and you're doing your training out of the goodness of your heart. I, again, teach full time, so it's difficult for me, obviously, to be on the training. So I listen back and I take notes. And so thank you, because I continue to get to know myself even more through your wonderful ability to explain the difference. So like any learner, it's beneficial to listen and take notes and then ask questions along the way. So I'm going to do my best at sharing what it was that Trish shared in her training. And so she broke out neurodiversity, and sometimes she calls it neurodiverse. and so do I. And in order to best understand, we're going to break it out into different components. And Trisha's going to chime in, and so is Laurel, if she sees, hey, let me add to that because I have knowledge in this area. Okay, so we have the academic part. So we have an umbrella of neurodiversity, right? And to the left, we could say we have the academic component. And under the academic component, we have dyslexia, right? We have dyscalculia, which I didn't spell right. And that's my dyslexia. And I'm okay with that, so long as you understand, right? So sometimes I wonder if I have that, because a lot of it has to do with some early trauma that I had. Dad, sorry if you're listening down from heaven, but when you were in your Barca lounger and mommy was doing the dishes, and she has 7 kids that she was tending to, and I know that you worked full time, but you would like sit down in the Barca lounger and you would be watching the news, right? And you were just trying to decompress from your day. I understand. But when mommy told me to come to you with my math problem, and I was distracted because of my ADHD, my ADD. I never had the hyper part. You you kind of stuck your finger and like hit me in the head, and you're not abusive, but you did that day. You did that, and you told me, pay attention, right? So I got scared. And then I just remember that day, that was the day that I told myself that I am not good enough. I'm not smart, because my daddy doesn't believe I'm smart. He is mad at me because I can't focus on this math problem. So understanding that sometimes we just have a story in our head, because recently I'm starting to break down teaching math in a way that makes sense to my kids and myself. And I'm realizing that I may not have that had someone taken the time to sit with me and first and foremost love me for what I was and wasn't, and told me that everything's going to be okay. We just need to spend a little extra time on this. Be patient, right? And so my dad didn't pull me into the dining room and shut off the TV. He just was aggravated that I was interrupting him. I think, I don't know, but that's what happened. So anyway, that really helped me understand and make me think, like, okay, I dug a little deeper with my healing and realized that that's probably just a story in my head, that I may not have that. And then dysgraphia.
Well, you could. And we know, not spring chickens. We've been, my diagnosis was 1983. They didn't know much. The definition of LD, learning disabled, which I was initially labeled with, we came around 1975. So that label itself was only, how many years is that? 8 years old. So that's what I'm saying. I'd like for it to be now named neurodiversity with auditory and visual, along with a neurodiversity for most people, because I think if we looked at yours, we started to assess yours. It doesn't matter. You already have some diagnoses going on. We're figuring things out. Most importantly, we're figuring out your gifts and strengths. Okay. But I think that I do need to say that where you are on the visual will be much more severe or higher than your auditory. And then I would be different. My auditory would be much more severe than my visual. See, so everybody's different under this umbrella, And
but the empowerment of knowing, it's so empowering to know and accept.
It is.
Yeah,
it sure is.
I mean, the day that I was reading Sally Shaywitz's The Gift of Dyslexia, because I was in search of trying to help my son, and we received a diagnosis of dyslexia, and that's when I realized, oh wow, this is exactly me. And it was so empowering, because I was like, I'm not stupid. I don't need to feel shame around this. I just needed to be taught in a different way. And wow, what an awakening that was, which brings us to why we are so passionate about helping those who have similar differences, because if you don't understand it and you don't embrace it, you're going to be stifled and frozen, right, in time. So anyway, moving on, dysgraphia. Ugh, as a school teacher, I hate writing on the whiteboard. It's like pull down, push up, and around. And I'm trying to teach cursive. You know, that cursive is, like you were saying, Trish, soft on the mind and soft on the hand, right? And
Fluid, yeah,
there's
fluid on the hand, and you can see
fluid.
that it's soft, which is interesting because you're probably visualizing it and it's rather soft, isn't it? But it was, see, the
Yes.
language there got you a little bit. Because how many times have you heard me say cursive, fluid on the mind, it's fluid on the hand, and vice versa. So that's
Yeah. And then
definitely a language.
dyspraxia. I forget
Yeah.
what dyspraxia is.
Yeah. So dyspraxia affects more of your coordination and movement, either fine or gross. But it also has a lot to do with organization and capabilities to sequence and categorize. So it's a
Oh,
little bit
okay.
more than dyslexia. That's what I'm saying. Like, I would like to be actually labeled neurodiversity with auditory, visual, with a language component and fine motor skill, but not gross. See, my gross isn't affected, just my fine. See, and I do have sensory integration problems, right? So I'm just
Yeah.
giving the
So the
most.
fine is definitely me. Fine is definitely me, because gross, it's like I was a good
No, my gross is
dancer.
good. Yeah. See, but if it's dyspraxia, it's gonna be more of fine and gross. So that's why I always ask parents a lot about fines to see if we want to go for a dysgraphia diagnosis, and see if you want to go seek out a specialist with that, or do you want, or if it's fine and gross, is it, we need to go see somebody for dyspraxia. You see what I'm saying?
Okay. Um,
Oh, where'd it go?
wow. So I see I'm always learning. Okay, so then we went into there's other things that affect our learning, right? And so on the other side of the umbrella, we can say, oh no, you have it on the left side, doesn't matter what side, that there's other things that affect our learning. We might
Oh,
also
executive
have
functioning.
okay,
Executive functioning, because you said,
ADHD.
yeah, that just reminded me,
Yeah,
you said, oh, you have it on the left, and I've had it on the left the whole time, and you said it was on the left. Then you go, oh, it's okay, it's on the left. See, your executive functioning messed you there. And of course, look, I spelled it wrong. Still can't spell it, but executive
okay.
functioning. Yeah.
So ADHD is another area that could affect our learning, right? And
Right.
autism, all that goes with autism. And the psychological, I thought that, you know, we definitely can't forget about that, the oppositional defiancy disorder. So are there other examples, Trish, of psychological other than ODD?
There are plenty psychological ones. The biggest one that I see is borderline personality disorder. It comes along with having overexcitabilities, where the brain overfires in some areas because of deficiencies in others. So you'll see the emotions going on a roller coaster, going from.
Okay, Dan has a student just like this.
Yes, that's the biggest
He's
one. So you can
personality
call it
disorder.
emotional intensity if you want. But it's basically it's like you're going from anger to happiness to sadness to
That's
shame.
him in a
You're
nutshell.
jumping
This is that
everywhere with your
boy.
emotions. Yes. And you think about it, I've been writing a lot about BPD, because think about it, if you're having learning with trauma, right? So you've got a genetic component for it to be triggered, and then it's turned on because you're having learning with trauma. due to having dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, dyspraxia, possibly ADHD, autism, Erland syndrome. So along with, don't forget the sensory integration problems and the executive functioning problems, right? So then of course your frontal lobe is not using its form of logic from your executive functioning, and also your ACC, your anterior, I don't know, I knew not to say it, but it's not reappraising your emotions. So it's just your emotions are everywhere. And also your hippocampus is not into the correct time and space. You don't know where you belong in there. So your sequencing, your categorizing, your emotions, your short-term memory are all off. So of course, how can I not be writing a lot lately about emotional intensity and BP? That's also part of BPD.
Okay, so when you do borderline personality disorder.
Not to be confused with
So
multiple
can we
personality.
make a note that I would love for us to help the listeners in that area? I don't have any students like that, but there are teachers out there
Yeah, I
that
think you do.
are
That's why I'm
experiencing
making
this.
awareness. No, I think you do. Because if they have these things, they could have been experienced, not in your class, learning with trauma. So they do, you're just not knowing what to look for yet. That's why I keep on putting
Okay.
things up there on it. But you probably
Okay,
know.
I understand. So what I hear you saying is that maybe it's internal on them. They're not expressing
Yes.
it outwardly.
Yes.
Okay. Because
Anger, shame,
but
anger,
when you
shame.
have like my husband's a special needs teacher as well, and he has severe and profound children, and he has a child that is presenting outwardly borderline personality disorder.
Yes.
Okay, so that the reason I say, can we do a whole episode on that at some point, is
Yes. And
because
executive functioning.
there are, what do you do with a child like that in the classroom? So that's going to be a whole
Another episode.
Wow, that would be great. Okay, so now within the differences, it's best to assess for us as neurodiverse as well as educators, and spend time learning whether we have it or they have it, because it's empowering again, right? So in addition to that, we can dig a little deeper and find out, do we have a visual processing disorder? Do we have an auditory processing disorder? Do we have a language processing disorder? DISPD, I didn't know what that stood for. Did I type that wrong? Sensory processing disorder. Oh, so maybe the DI I typed wrong. So sensory processing is SPD. Okay. And then the social ability is important too. That's what Laurel, I think, was referring to. Her socially feeling like, where do I fit in socially?
Yeah, the social emotional, as you know, needs to be looked at through looking at their gifts, strengths, interests, and checking to see if they've already have anger and shame, where the variance of it fluctuating and what it's going to look like. So how anger appears is totally different than how shame appears in the classroom. It's going to, I think let's need to say it all again. We say it every single time, but
yes, but it's so important.
More outward, and then shame is more inward.
But I mean, I think for the listeners to understand, just to sum up, we're just trying to get the why behind, why we need to understand what neurodifference is, right? So today's episode is all about what neurodiversity is, and that at this point we can celebrate. We can celebrate that we have really come far as educators, instead of just saying the vague diagnosis that, oh, they have a learning disability, right? We can, and or other health impaired. We can dig in a little deeper if we take that time in the beginning to really assess our students and get to know them on all levels, right? But if you are neurodiverse, you tend to be also, in addition to like all of that, right? Here's how it presents itself. We can be hyper or hyposensitive. I think, Trish, would you agree that you and I are hyper? I would like to know if Laurel is sensitive to others. I think
Yeah,
she is, and ourselves. She's very empathetic like us. I think that she probably has like the gift of intuitive. I know she does. I just know she does
she's
because
intuitive
she,
about you being intuitive. There we go.
yes.
Well, we know you're empathetic. That's what drove me to, work with you. I just feel it, You were just
Yes,
both
I
of
could
y'all.
feel it through it. It's
I
crazy.
know,
Feel
it's
through the
crazy.
screen, right? Um, Divergent thinkers. I'm not sure what I am in this area. Opposite of what most people have is convergent thinking. So divergent and convergent, I'm not sure as a learner where I am in that area. So I would like at some point to dig a little deeper and figure that out about myself. And then once I understand myself, I'll be able to understand my children a little more, my students. Um, so moving forward, well, convergent, you really helped me out in that area. That's more the regular scientific theory, thinking that way, the steps to that.
Yep, that's correct.
We tend to see the whole part whole. And I'm trying to apply that to my life and the lives of my students. We think out of the box. I'm the queen of that. I think that I know that because if I was ever in trouble, I was so good at problem solving. Like I would think completely different than anybody else would ever think. Well, I would never think to do that. It was like, yep, I'm definitely a
Yeah.
problem solver, and I think out of the box.
No, my thinking is always in what is everybody else doing? Okay, I'm not doing that. And
Right.
that gets you in trouble in school now. I don't think it can. It actually did.
Right. We subjective feelings, future, we think conceptually and in 3D, right? And we're nonlinear.
Yeah, I want to talk
So
about that
that
today.
means,
I didn't
yeah.
mention it to you. I'm sorry. Let me finish
And
this. Yeah,
mhm.
yeah. So yes. So subjective thinking, we base our observations are based off evaluation, color, shape, size, dimension, chant, meter, rhyme, pattern. So it's all that we see in our minds, basically. So we see these conceptual thoughts into our mind. So we're going to get them out in language. It's only going to be in lists. Like, you better believe we've been forced to speak in whole phrases or sentences to get these things out, to express what we're
Yes.
seeing to others, right? But what we care about more is subjective things, like feelings. We care more about, when I would read a story, I'd pay more attention to what the character was feeling than what I was supposed to be knowing about it. Like, where did this happen? What year did it happen? I didn't care about all that. I cared about that character's feelings. And boy, did that get me in trouble with comprehension, right? And future, I was thinking, how am I going to help this lady? I'm not thinking about all these details in the story. I'm thinking about this lady, And so now I want to make I don't know that word I was going to say, caveat to that or something. So I noticed that it was getting me in trouble, the fact that I was caring too much for feelings and future. So I try to access more of my left side of my brain to be able to analyze and break things down, right? So how I learned to do it is through mind mapping. I had to do it physically out, and then I do it now in my head. So I didn't like either that I think non-linearly, that everything is
Mhm.
just scattered in the whole picture into my mind, right? So I actually
Mind
do,
mapping.
yes, mind mapping. Look it up, Google it, guys. It's going to rock your world. It's going to be able to have you take that visual image that you're seeing and breaking it down visually so you can then explain it to other people. So I see now something that is linear into a mind map in my head that looks like a continuum going up. like this that I'm showing, only the YouTube people can see. So I can break things down that I'm seeing this way. It's so funny. Then I can express it in a logical way that makes sense to people. But it still comes from feelings, future observations, evaluations. Don't think it isn't. It's still coming from there. But then here I've adapted by being able to put it onto this continuum in my head to express it. So that means for me to tell you is I can care about facts and functions and forms, which is the analysis of the left side, as long as it has to do with my interest. So luckily with age, my interest has built and really gone up. When you're a child, your interest is the few things that you find excitement with. Legos, dinosaurs. When I was young, I had all the different dinosaurs memorized. I had all the different types of animal breeds recognized, right? So it usually does have to do with people, animals, and nature. But luckily with age, my interest has grown. That makes teaching adults easier, teaching me easier. And now with the adaptation of being able to put into a mind map, that I can actually use the academic sides of facts, forms, and functions. What did I do here? I did a repetition of a word in the middle position. That was my dyslexia. Did y'all see that?
Yes.
Okay, repetition of a word in the middle position. But anyway, you can do it a letter or word or even part of a sentence. But anyway, so
You have facts written,
yeah,
but that's okay.
Yeah.
So facts, forms, and functions. But
Yeah.
so what I hear you saying is that if we do the initial assessments and we find out the gifts and strengths, and we base our teaching on their interests, and we address the fact that we think in list forms, and we introduce mind mapping, that we should be off and running, that our kids' needs should be met, and they should grow emotionally, physically, and mentally throughout a day. If we lay
As long as you get them to trust themselves. So you got to put them in a very safe environment that they've not haven't maybe have gotten to experience before.
Right. And so I think in summation here, I do want to leave the listeners with, I get emotional thinking about it. When I've had my one autistic student for 2.5 years, on Friday, we sat together and he shared his life with me. 18 solid minutes of him telling me about his life in his house as the only son in the house, and he's got 3 sisters, and these birds that one came together with another neighbor's bird, and now there's 7, and he told me all their names and their personalities and the vocabulary that came out of this. And he was so smooth in his speaking, when in the past he would constantly be stimming and stumbling over his words and always go, oh, I meant to say, and he was just so confident. And so I'm going to toot my horn and say, I know it came from him finally feeling safe and not judged, and me constantly telling him, it's okay, you're good, right? And so at the end, I just said, can I just thank you? Thank you for sharing your life with me. Now, I just am curious, based on your interest, you told me that you want to do a project on the planets. Would you rather write a story about these birds and then create like a fantasy story instead? He goes, no, that's okay, we'll do the planets. I was like, but guess what? You're going to do both, because this was amazing. And we can take all the characters, your birds, and turn them into a story, and you can bless others. Like, so anyway, I just want to end.
You're listening to him, and you're modeling listening skills back to him, and you're using his receptive and expressive language. So people don't realize that's still literacy. When you're saying, I'm a reading specialist or I'm a dyslexia tutor, you're working on their reading, writing, and speaking.
Yes. So the speaking component, right? And so, I was just so thankful that I thought to, let me just record this. So it's all recorded, right? So it'll be up on the Trello board under our case study that we're doing. And we'll be able to see it in action, right? And it was just definitely me, just like, I'm going to drop everything right now. I feel like I need to be with you. And it was just awesome. It was such an awesome day. So much happened on Friday. I didn't even get to share with you. So for the listeners, I think we're going to close unless there's something else that we want to say. We just want to thank you for your time. And if you have any additional questions, you can reach out. Definitely subscribe to all of the podcasts that are connected to this. And anything else, Trish, that they can, ways that they can connect if they want to know more. But moving forward, for the next episode, we're going to be, we invited Susan Bedingfield's daughter, Katie, to come and speak and share her story. So if you know anyone that has a neurodifference and they want to share their testimony and let us get to know them and help them get their story out, we are interested. So we're going to have a Google form that you can fill out, and that will help you stay on track with what you want to say on our episodes. So with that being said, I think we can say ta-ta for now.
Thank you. All stay safe and warm. Bye.
All right, you too. Happy snow.
Yeah.
All right, bye.